We are back with NBA play-in coverage. Let's talk about this very first ball game, shall we? Hawks Magic was the first of the doubleheader matches yesterday night. And again, the game plan was very clear from the beginning. The Hawks needed to try to space out the floor and prevent the Magic defense from imposing their will early and often in the ballgame. And the Magic, they were definitely going to have to be reliant on that element, and they in turn had to see some improved shooting on their end. Let's just say that the game plan for both squads, it wasn't working in the very early stages of the game. As soon as I get in there, both teams just struggled. Like, they were running different plays. The Magic, for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, for example, to get some open three-point looks in the corner and on the wing, and he just bricked all of them. Then for the Hawks, they let the Magic defense just get going early and often. Sure, they were able to get a few paint points here and there, but they could not shoot the rock either. They relied on Reza Shea a couple times, and he missed. They were just making errant decisions all around. So this was a very slow start for both squads. A bit of a slugfest, if you will. And then the Magic would start to wake it up a little bit. The Hawks would get a bucket to go from Karis LeVert, and then after that, I kid you not, from that portion of time in the first quarter to around the early second quarter, they went on to miss 12 of their next 14 shots from the field. They only had a few free throws here and there, but not only were they just crumbling offensively, defensively, they were letting themselves go. Anthony Black was able to make a few plays, including one play earlier on where he got a block on Trae Young after getting a layup and then hitting a three-pointer to give them a greater edge. That would become a problem for the Hawks. Not to mention that Cole Anthony off the bench as well would begin his reign of damage early on in this time as well. They would go on to lose that first quarter by 15 points. And as aggressive and as physical as the Magic's defense can be, the Hawks recognized that they couldn't. They had to understand that they could not fall victim to something like this. And their response every time, miss after miss after miss after miss. And not to mention, too, that Trae Young was just getting hounded on the offensive side of the ball. It was just relentless from the opening tip. One advantage that you could argue the Hawks had over the Magic had over the Hawks was size. And the defensive game plan for them was clearly to use that to their full advantage, especially against an individual like Trae Young. And the Hawks offered no resistance to that as well. I mean, Onyeka Okongwu I did cite as an individual that had to set hard screens to give Trae Young open space. But honestly, just anyone, do whatever you can. Make it difficult on these wing defenders for the Magic to account for Trae Young in this way. And literally everybody on that squad had their turn with guarding Trae Young. He saw everyone at pretty much every point of the ball game guarding him. You had Paolo Banchero picking him up. You had Franz Wagner picking him up. You had Jonathan Isaac picking him up. You had Wendell Carter Jr. picking him up. You had Anthony Black picking him up. Rotations of these people finding a way to trap him and wear him down physically. They were even sending double teams, for crying out loud. They just weren't setting effective screens at all. They were able to break right through and pressure him enough to start some errant decision making for him. And I guess by and large force other people to step up, which for the most part did not happen, especially on the offensive end. Like literally, he had to resort to dribbling. Obviously, he can be a shifty player, and he's trying his hardest to dribble around these people, and they are still finding ways to get there because some of them just have good lateral quickness, but all of them also have just really long strides compared to Trae Young. Let's just be honest about this. So they just were not fooled all the time. Now, Trae Young, as the second quarter would go on, he settled for trying to draw a few fouls here and there and just get some of the Magic defenders just scared off a little bit. They didn't necessarily get into deep foul trouble, but at the very least, just try to take some of the pressure off. The Magic offensively, for a pocket of time in this second quarter, went a little cold as well. But still, they maintained a lead that got as high as 21 in this quarter. So, 22 in this quarter. After a few and ones. You also had guys like Franz Wagner as well when not doing work on Trae Young. Like the team, for the most part, up and down the roster, just played really sound defense. Wagner was doing a ton of dirty work in the paint. You typically wouldn't see that from him, but he got a few blocks, including one on Zachary Rizache, and then eventually got an and one on Muhammad Gay to extend their lead. Now, by the end of it, the Magic were still up big time with a score of 61-47. Entering that point, the Magic had been 17-3 on the season when scoring more than 60 points in the first half. And it felt like they could win the ball game with their combination of bench production and really solid play. Keep in mind, too, that while Paolo Banchero was struggling in terms of shooting, he was playing the point forward position really well, getting players into their spots and just trying his best to run the offense. Yes, Trae Young was trying to do the same thing, but again, there's a big difference there when you could rely on a few guys at least to give you that offensive firepower if you aren't going to provide it yourself. And the burden necessarily as well didn't have to be allocated completely on you. Went a long way for the Magic in this game. It also is interesting, too, to see that they would detail that Franz Wagner was one of 7 NBA players in history to log 5,500 points, 1,300 rebounds, and 1,000 assists in their first 4 seasons while being aged 23 or younger. Some of the names on that list included LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Anthony Edwards, Luka Doncic, and I believe Anthony Davis was there as well. I think Magic Johnson was there too. That's pretty fucking wild. That is just insane. Like, you wouldn't necessarily expect it. But Wagner, since coming into the NBA, has been a really solid, at least offensive player. I didn't think that much of his defense or facilitating. But reaching those thresholds and being up on that list with that core of guys, with all of them being either in the Hall of Fame or Hall of Fame bound, potentially, if you look at guys like Doncic and Edwards, that's pretty good company to be in. To open up the third quarter, the Hawks would get a little spurt going and actually get it within a single-digit ball game. Still, they just were no match for the offensive firepower, especially in the paint, as the Magic would just start out trying to impose their will there. So you got a few Paolo Banchero buckets in there, and you got some good work from Wendell Carter Jr. down low, getting physical on rebounds and out-muscling guys like Onyeka Okongwu in the paint for second chance points. Another aspect that truly just killed all of their momentum. Trae Young, to his credit, eventually got the game within 4. Like, they literally would not necessarily relent. They were actually making a solid stride back. You can also attribute that to the Magic just once more being inconsistent on offense. And granted, I mean, when you harken back to the beginning of the game, both teams started out 1 of 3 and 1 of 5 from deep, respectively. The Magic are still by far the worst three-point shooting team in the league. The Hawks were a little bit above league average, and they were able to use that to their advantage here. Even at the end of the third quarter, despite a little bit of back and forth, you would have Georges Niang get a buzzer beater. All of a sudden, it felt like the Hawks had a little bit of a chance. And then, just like that, they open up the fourth quarter so horribly. I kid you not. You get Wendell Carter Jr. with a layup, and then Anthony Black with a free throw, and then Cole Anthony getting involved in back-to-back plays with a three-pointer off a pick and roll, and then also just a lob to fucking Wendell Carter Jr. that forced the Hawks to take a timeout immediately. All of a sudden, they had a 12-point lead and ripped off all those points in a row just like that. So while the Hawks were ultimately able to get just a few more buckets, even getting an and one with Karis LeVert off a mid-range shot, he drew the foul on Paolo Banchero, that still wasn't enough. By that point, the daggers were just raining in from both Cole Anthony and Anthony Black. It got so bad that the Hawks ultimately just decided to put in their bench players. And also, over the course of this time, Trae Young, naturally being frustrated, and honestly, I can't blame him, he threw the ball at a referee and then just kept on playing around with the other one and eventually got ejected from the ball game. Again, I'm sure that they would be at an all-time high given what the hell was going on with this Hawks squad. But that's definitely just not something that should be repeated, I would say. But ultimately, the Magic were able to win this ball game by a final score of 120-95. The Hawks did try late. They put up a little bit of a fight, but early on, that hole eventually was too much for them to overcome. And then they reverted right back to those detrimental ways when it counted the most. It's like Yes, neither team is necessarily adept at shooting the three ball. But, dude, 38.1% shooting from the field as a team, and then 19% from deep. Literally, no one, not even Trae Young himself, could make anything. And granted, that's for a reason. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that he played well. The box score will tell you that he put up 28 points, 6 assists, and 2 rebounds on 8 of... It'll tell you that. But he shot 8 of 21 from the field and shot 1 of 5 from 3, needing 11 makes on 12 free throw attempts to add to his field goal makes. 33 total shots to get 28 points. That is horrible efficiency in every sense of the word. So I'm not going to... You cannot say that he played well. But at the same time, when your shooters are not performing like that, when the rest of your team goes 3 of 14 from deep, and then even with some of the easiest shots imaginable, especially during that run in which they went just 2 of 14 shooting earlier in the game in between the first and second quarter, these were routine layups that they were just smoking and missing. So you can't even do that. You can't even rely on your players to do that for you. They were certainly in for exactly what they got yesterday night. You can't be surprised why they ended up dropping this game. Just can't be. George Niang, for him to still be the second leading scorer with 15 points is all right, I guess. Muhammad Gay had 12. Onyeka Okongwu had 11 and 9. Dyson Daniels, to his credit, just 7 points, sure, but even he was trying to play make a little bit as well. 7 assists for him, 12 rebounds, and 2 blocks, bringing in that sure defense that he always does. But the main and potentially most egregious performances here would be those combined performances of Caris LeVert, Zachary Rizalshe, and Terrence Mann. Now, again, I understand that Zachary Rizalshe is a rookie, but, bro, 2 of 10 shooting? He couldn't buy a bucket at all. And then all night long, his defensive effort, it just tailed off. Like, it started off being respectable, and then it just went completely poor from there. Then you have Caris LeVert off the bench. You have no excuse. You are a veteran in this game. And you shot just 3 of 11 in this ball game for your 7 points. Then Terrence Mann, in a game where corner shooting would have been very helpful, he didn't even make a single shot from the field and finished with just 2 points on the night. So again, at that point, what exactly can Trae Young do if he can't depend on anyone relatively key to the scheme to do their jobs and do them well in the moment? This is the result of that. I'm telling you, they've got a chance, but I don't know. If history has told us anything, again, it's that he struggles against these teams in the 9-10 matchup that will be played later on tonight in high stakes. He struggles against those guys here. So they could be in for another repeat of this unless their guys finally decide to show up. They're going to have to. This is your very last shot. You have to make the most of it. As for the Magic, again, as I alluded to, Paolo Banchero played solid defense, but offensively, he did not shoot the best. Just 4 of 13 shooting for him. Still, he finished with 17 points, and once more, played the point forward position very well, dishing out 7 assists and also grabbing 9 rebounds. Franz Wagner also had tremendous defensive effort, but didn't do a whole bunch of scoring. Just 6 of 15 shooting for him, no threes. He did score 13 points anyways, and grabbed 13 rebounds, including 12 defensive rebounds. Also dishing out 3 assists, nabbing 2 steals, and blocking a shot. The real heroes of this game would have to be Wendell Carter Jr. in the starting spot, even hitting a 3 of his own and putting up 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists while making life a living hell for any interior presence on that Hawks roster at any given moment. And then Anthony Black and Cole Anthony off the bench combined for 42 points respectively, as Black had 16 and Anthony had 26 points and 6 assists without a single turnover on 10 of 17 shooting with 4 threes. It is crazy to see that a player in Cole Anthony's position legitimately spurred them to victory and then led them, essentially with this win, to a playoff series. Now, I'm not going to go into insight on it here, but all I will say is that the Magic are set to take on the Celtics. Still, just a great performance all around. But, again, if you're a general NBA fan, this game was relatively just disappointing to see. Trae Young and that squad is going to have to turn it around rather quickly. They're going to have a couple days rest, it looks like. But they need to dig deep, bro. It's as simple as that. Alright, moving on to the nightcap between the Warriors and the Grizzlies. Off the rip. Off the fucking rip. The Grizzlies wanted to make a statement. Of course they would. They darted out to an 11-2 run. Instantly. And I guess my take on that was, the Warriors were just forcing up a lot of shots in those first couple minutes. Like, you even had attempts to foul bait instead of just taking easy layups. I'm like, dude, there's no need for foul baiting. You just have to stack together points. This game means too much to do that. Like, did you not learn from what happened in the Clippers game when you tried to foul bait? You fucked up. You just, you gotta come on, man. But that's credit to the Grizzlies as well. Even with their backs against the wall, seemingly, they seemed to have an early understanding and a sense of urgency in what was going on here. So with John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. making theirs, they would increase the lead to 9. And then the Warriors would really just take things over. Now, it was a very long process, but to start things out, you have Jimmy Butler III and Stephen Curry getting in their bags pretty early on. And then with 7 minutes and 5 seconds left in the first quarter, John Morant would make a pretty solid jumper in the mid-range. Let's just say that the Warriors, after this point, they took things over completely. You had them daring Gary Payton II to shoot for whatever reason, and he did that. Quentin Post had a really good sequence as well. You had Zach Edey attempt to dunk it on Quentin Post, and he stifled his attempt immediately. Then sprinted down the court with a very good whip pass from Buddy Hield, putting Post right into position for an easy look at the top of the key that he splashed. Then the Splash Brothers reincarnate would get a couple of buckets to go. And more of the same down the stretch as Jimmy Butler III would increase his scoring over the course of the rest of the first quarter to an output of 10 points in that period. You would also see Quentin Post hit another three later on. And all of a sudden, the Grizzlies would have a few responses up their sleeve. It began with a Desmond Bane make in the mid-range, which ended a streak for the Grizzlies. You see, I mentioned that Ja Morant last made a jumper at 7 minutes and 5 seconds, right? The only scoring output that the Grizzlies had during this stretch came from the free throw line. They did not make a single field goal in 6 minutes and 6 seconds. That Warriors defense was clamping. They were getting active everywhere. They were just trapping Zach Edey in the paint. So he made a few errant decisions, and they were just playing aggressive on-ball defense, no matter what. So that is major credit to that adjustment. Desmond Bane would get another layup to go after that, and then Luke Kennard would actually hit a buzzer beater to seemingly give the Grizzlies a little bit of momentum, right? No, because it would just get worse and worse and worse for them from there. As Quentin Post would get him again, Brandon Podziemski would get a three-pointer to go. Zach Edey would score his very first point of the ball game. To that point, he was all for. That's how drastic it was for that team. They would do well in managing the minutes off the court with Stephen Curry, and he would come right back in and hit a three-pointer. All of a sudden, you have this lead just continuing to increase. They got up to as high as 20 after a Stephen Curry 4-point play on Scottie Pippen Jr. as he got the little sneaky pass in to none other than Kevon Looney. He darts over to the corner. Kevon Looney screens up. Scottie Pippen Jr. tries to close out and just pushes him down to the ground. And the rest is pretty easy to deduce from there. Now the Grizzlies would try to shorten things up, but the Warriors just had an equal amount of responses in their bag, with Jimmy Butler III and Stephen Curry continuing to do most of the damage before Moses Moody III closed out the scoring for the Warriors in this half. And then Santi Aldama would take the lead down to 12, eventually with another floater. To that point, by the end of the first half, the Warriors had been on a 65-44 overall run since that 11-2 start. It's pretty crazy to think about there. The third quarter, a quarter that is usually owned by the Warriors, would see things become very, very interesting here. All of a sudden, like off the rip, the Grizzlies had a game plan to double Jimmy Butler as soon as he received the ball in the post and try to pressure him into making some errant decisions here and there. For a time, the Warriors were able to counter it with good shooting, but over time, misses would accumulate, and the game plan actually started to do wonders for the Grizzlies, who themselves just turned up their three-point shooting to the max, as Desmond Bane would give them a very good spark. And then Ja Morant would actually get an and one, but that came at a slight cost, as he went down with a brief ankle injury That sidelined him for a little bit. He would return to the game, by the way. But while all this was going on, you had the Warriors try their best to game plan a way to just hold them off. And Stephen Curry would do that instantly by hitting a three of his own from the top of the key, then getting multiple free throws to go in a row. But ultimately, the Grizzlies were just too much. Some open shooters were being given chance after chance after chance, and the Grizzlies were able to make them pay with both Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane. Jimmy Butler III would end off this third quarter by making a layup, but by that point, it felt like momentum was on the Grizzlies' side, especially with the way they opened the fourth quarter, as you would get back-to-back makes from Desmond Bane and John Conchar even. But the Warriors had their own plans here, as they, in the third quarter, did start to implement their own double team on Zach Edey in the post and forcing him to make errant decisions. It worked some favors for them then, leading to some easy points in transition. But they were also able to just ramp up their overall defensive intensity once more. Yet, even to their best efforts, I mean, bro, they were getting their hands up as best as possible. They were engaging ball handlers as best as they could. And yet, it was just a back and forth ball game from here on out. No one team could really get too much of an edge here. But you would have the Warriors eventually get themselves in a spot to close out the game with back-to-back three-pointers from none other than Stephen Curry. And then BS started to happen. You would have Draymond Green get taken out of the ball game on a very questionable foul call. Like, maybe Bane was pushed out of bounds on this particular play that I'm talking about. But at the same time, it felt like Desmond Bane's momentum simply carried him out of bounds. He wasn't even touched by him, and yet they still decided to just rule that a foul. So he already had 5 to that point. That was the last straw. He was taken out of the game from there. Then you had Desmond Bane make the couple of free throws. The Grizzlies did make a really smart defensive play on their own end by getting Jimmy Butler into a situation where he was essentially trapped in the corner with nowhere to go. And instincts told him to pass to one of the primary ball handlers, even though there were other shooters open. But it is what it is, right? You had him looking for Stephen Curry, of course. But interestingly enough, he was down on the ground because Scottie Pippen Jr. was engaging with him so much and so intensely so as not to allow him a chance at the ball that he pushed him down to the ground. So by the time Jimmy Butler III makes this decision to pass it over there, Stephen Curry's down because he got pushed. Now, they don't call that. They let that play on because of physicality, right? Then what happens next is insane. Podziemski sprints down the court as Scottie Pippen Jr. is trying to skirt away for the layup. And Podziemski blocks the hell out of him with a response on a hell of a defensive play that I'm still going to give him credit for. Clearly the refs were not of that notion of just letting things play. Because how do you allow Stephen Curry to be pushed down to the ground, but you call a foul on a routine chase down block? That is insane work. And to make matters worse for the Grizzlies, ball didn't fucking lob because Scottie Pippen Jr. mixed the second free throw attempt of his. So it was a 3-point ball game at this point. You would have the Warriors advance the ball at the court and try a shot with Stephen Curry. He did miss the two-pointer, just a very short attempt at the rim. It is what it is, but you would have thought that there would have been an offensive rebound there as Kevon Looney was fighting for it. They called a foul on Kevon Looney in this situation. A loose ball foul. And it sends Zach Edey to the free throw line. Another questionable call here. Like, what? They're engaging to try and get the ball from one another. Don't know how you could even say that that is a loose ball foul. It is actively in the hands. What are we doing? Zach Edey would make both, and the Warriors would advance the ball up the court yet again. They would have no other choice but to foul Stephen Curry, who would sink both. The Grizzlies would have one more chance, just one more chance. There were a very good list of candidates to choose from in terms of who to pass the ball to in this moment, because pretty much every single player on this court at the moment had done something pretty solid for you at some point in the ballgame. Then they would not all of a sudden be able to fully execute it, because Santi Aldama folded and got a 5-second violation that would give the Warriors the ball back and ultimately give them the chance to close things out with multiple Stephen Curry free throws once more, as the Warriors would win the game by a score of 121-116, securing their first ever play-in win as during this stretch. Pretty crazy stuff. Now, in this ball game, I guess a few things that stood out to me from both sides. I liked the Quentin Post minutes as far as this ball game went. The box score will not necessarily tell you everything. He played 22 minutes, had 11 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal on 4 or 5 shooting with 3 threes. But I was watching this game, and I can tell you, man, especially with his work on Zach Edey and Santi Aldama down low, he was getting his hands up and contesting some shots that made things very, very tough for other players to make. Even though they kind of were able to still get around it, that defensive intensity helped. There were multiple sequences as well where this man was diving for loose balls. As a rookie, undrafted rookie doing that speaks volumes. And he was getting physical. He was getting physical in the paint. One of his makes was him literally taking on Zach Edey and Santi Aldama on a double team in the paint and just barreling down the hill, taking a dribble, and putting up a tough layup. It's not something that we've been seeing from him this entire season. So to have glimpses of that last night was exceptional. Gary Payton II as well, always a marvel to have off the bench as a defensive player. He got in Zach Edey's head. Like literally at the end of that third quarter, you have the Grizzlies trying to get up. They're trapping Zach Edey. He doesn't know what to do, and he just pretty much blocks Zach Edey from behind. He got some routine cuts to go and converted some timely layups as well. And yes, just 2 of 6 3-point shooting. But at the same time, he made the ones that mattered the most. They dared that man to shoot, and he made them pay immediately. So credit to him. Brandon Pajemski would certainly have to step things up in the next game. But, still, a player that even with him doing just an incremental amount of scoring, he put everything else out there on the line, man. And that's all you can ask for. Moses Moody, same thing. That man got a fucking poster on Desmond Bane. I kid you not. He fucked him up. And was also another player who did some very good work on defense. The usual suspects. Draymond Green, though he did have more fouls than points in this ball game, he did have a 10-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. And also grabbed 3 steals and 6 rebounds. Just continuing to drive home the point that even with him getting older in age, he is still just a monster on the defensive side of the ball that you do not, under any circumstance, want to face. And then you have the Jimmy Butler III and Stephen Curry duo. Jimmy Butler played 40 minutes and had 38 points. His season high, I think generally speaking even, and 6 assists with 7 rebounds and 3 steals on 12 of 20 shooting from the field, multiple threes, and also 12 of 18 shooting from the free throw line. Just a pure-on masterclass. He has played passive for pretty much the entire season. And then on the precipice of a potential playoff berth, he is ramping up his production at the right time. This is exactly what you would want to see. This is exactly what we have seen in the past with Jimmy Butler when it comes to him rising as a player in the playoffs. It's happening. And then Stephen Curry as well struggles early in the game to having a monster fourth quarter that eventually saw him finish the game with 37 points on 9 of 22 shooting with 6 threes and also 13 free throw attempts and makes. Because they finally decided to account for just how physical these defenders are getting with him. He also grabbed 8 rebounds and dished out 4 dimes. He didn't foul at any point in this ballgame. That's pretty ideal. You want to keep those fouls to a minimum for every player. But the fact of the matter is that when you have an offensive-minded player in Stephen Curry being surrounded by two-way guys, maybe, in Jimmy Butler III, the way that he can affect an offense and defense, and then Draymond Green in the way that he can affect an offense with his passing and his overall defense as the quarterback of one. Moses Moody and Brandon Pajemski being really solid defenders for their positions as well. It makes for a very tough lineup to account for. Especially if you do not recognize the size advantage that you have, which the Grizzlies did have. And ultimately, in any playoff series, that could be a struggle for the Warriors eventually. Also, getting Jonathan Kuminga back, because I think they said he was dealing with a right pelvic contusion. They're going to have to ensure that he's all set. So, definitely would love to have that production off the bench as well. As for the Grizzlies, for Desmond Bane to keep them in this ballgame as much as he did, scoring 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, with a steal and a block as well, and 11 of 21 shooting, and 5 threes, hitting timely shots again, even when John Morant was out for a brief second. It's a testament to how he has ascended as a player this season. Overall, not just as a sort of secondary scorer, but also as a facilitator, as a quarterback of the offense. So you have to give respect there. Jaren Jackson Jr. was also able to make them pay, but Jaren Jackson Jr. has got to tighten it up, man, because every single time, like I kid you not, that's why it is so hard sometimes to gauge just how good he is defensively. Because, yes, there are times where he is truly a force to be reckoned with down there. And then there are other times where he will literally play himself out of ball games early and often, forcing the Grizzlies into spots where they get on cold stretches defensively and where they ultimately lose ball games. Because he gets himself in foul trouble so damn early. Like, he had 4 in this ball game in a relatively short amount of time. Now, thank goodness that he had the discipline to just stay on his P's and Q's for the rest of the game. But, bro, you have to recognize how much they need you on that front. You can't be that reckless all the damn time if you're Jaren Jackson Jr. Scottie Pippen Jr. fell out of the ball game as well, after scoring just 9 points and dishing out 5 dimes. Life was hell for Zach Edey down there. Anytime you can force someone of his size to shoot 4 of 11 inside the restricted area, you know you're doing your job. Now, yes, he finished with 14 points still, and credit to him, he even grabbed 17 rebounds as well. So that's yet another double-double for him. There was also a stat line that stated he had a sort of double-double milestone that was on par with some very storied players in franchise history. Sharif Abdur-Rahim and the Gasol brothers were on the same trajectory with this particular milestone. And again, for the Grizzlies, that's a good class of company to be in. But Zach Edey is just going to have to kind of match the physicality, per se, because he's certainly capable of it. But what I chalk it up to is the fact that, he was killing. He was killing at Purdue in March Madness in last year, technically 2024. He was killer, man. He was just dominating teams left and right. But there's a fundamental difference between March Madness and the playoff atmosphere in the NBA. This is his first ever encounter of something like this. And to be honest, if he can contribute that in 33 minutes of play while not necessarily having the experience, imagine what could happen if he actually decides to lock himself in to dishing out some more physicality and being more prepared. Anything is truly possible from there. So, yeah, that will do it for the play-in games from yesterday. I will see you guys once more tomorrow, or Friday, I believe, or when the next, tomorrow for tonight's play-in games between the Heat and Bulls and the Kings and Mavericks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and peace out.